and thank you for joining us this evening for what I think is going to be a fun evening of a little bit of learning and a little bit of tasting of some good food later. Okay. So, as Audrey mentioned earlier, this is American Heart Month, which is part of the reason why this discussion came up, or why we want to talk a little bit about how to live a heart-healthy life. But as all of you also know, last week was another holiday sort of with an emphasis on the heart, which is why it kind of gave me why the title came about. Don't go breaking my heart, simple ways to live a heart-healthy life. And you'll get an idea, you'll see later on why I brought this up. So this is me. All right, so the heart. That interesting symbol up there, that's actually the Chinese symbol for the heart. And if you ever look at an anatomical picture of the heart, you'll see it's a pretty nice, nice representation of what the heart is like. So why do we want to talk about the heart, and what's the big deal about it? It is a big deal. So if we think about it, just a couple of really interesting things about the heart. It's a muscle in the middle of our chest that functions ultimately as an electric pump of blood. Some really fascinating points about the heart. Every minute, approximately 5 to 6 liters of blood is pumped throughout the body by the heart. Does anyone have an idea of how much blood we do have in our body? We have about 5 to 6 liters. So every minute, the heart is able to pump the complete volume of our blood throughout the rest of the body and bring it back in that same time. In that same period, it's pumping about 70, on average, about 70 beats a minute. Okay? So it can go up a little higher, it can go a little lower, depending on your aerobic strength. But what they have averaged out so most of us on average live about 70 years, anywhere from 70 to 75 years. So based on the 70 beats per minute, if we do live an average life of 70 years, we can expect our heart to beat about 2 billion to 3 billion times total. And that's pretty impressive if you think about it, because the heart never takes a break. It's constantly pumping one after the other. 70 beats a minute, at least. That's usually when we're resting, and higher when we get a little bit more, when we have more exercise and activity. And that just made me want to kind of try this little experiment, or you can try this. The heart is a muscle. We have other muscles around our body. They're a little bit different. We have skeletal muscles that move our arms and legs, but the heart is still a muscle. So think about this. Our biceps. Let's say we don't have a weight, and we start doing this, a bicep curl with no weight. We try to do it faster than 1 a second, so it's about 70 times a second. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. That's the heart. Try to do this for 24 hours. While you're sleeping, try to do this. And see how your arm feels tomorrow morning. And email me how it feels, because that's the amazing thing. This organ continues to beat at that rate for our whole life cycle. And once it stops, ultimately this life ends. So that's why it's important. That's why it's really important to think about the heart. Now, with that said, heart disease, though, is still the leading cause of death for Americans. Approximately 600,000 people will die of heart disease based on the Center for Disease Control's regular information. And that averages about, we can, for the most part, say that 1 out of every 4 of us will eventually die because of heart-related disease. So it is significant. Now, heart disease does encompass a wide variety of different conditions. But the most common condition is coronary artery disease, which of course can also lead to other more severe things like a heart attack, like angina, which is chest pain. It can lead to arrhythmias, which are abnormal rhythms of the electrical component of the heart. It can also lead to heart failure. Now, what coronary artery disease is, it's a narrowing of the small little arteries that feed the heart oxygen and blood. And it's caused by a buildup of plaque, which is known as atherosclerosis, which I'm sure many of you have heard. a little bit more important about heart disease is the fact that heart disease can develop at a very young age. This is not exclusive to an older age population. There's strong data and research to show that teenagers are, when we're teenagers, that's when we start developing the early stages of atherosclerosis, of coronary artery disease. And so on top of that, heart disease is a disease process that is largely preventable. And this is part of the big discussion that we'll be talking about today. A disease process that can start early on, that is more than likely going to kill us in the long term, or that is likely going to be the cause of our deaths, but is preventable. So all you have to do is make that choice to try to prevent it early on. Live a heart-healthy life. But given my background in traditional Chinese medicine, I like to bring in a little kind of interesting aspect, a little wisdom from 4,000 years ago. Now, the physicians of ancient China were, all of them were really, they were poets. They saw the human body, because there were laws against dissection in ancient China. They had to, they ultimately had to look at the body, and they looked at the body as a microcosm of everything else around them. They saw us as a small piece of the world, as a small piece of the universe. And so the way that they described different organ systems and different structures of how things worked were based on what was commonly seen in the world. So for someone who lived 4,000 years ago in China, the person who was in charge of everything was the king or the ruler. And of course, so the physicians of China saw the heart as being that ruler or monarch of the rest of the organs of the body. And they gave it different functions that, or they assumed that it had different functions. And one of them is very similar to what we believe in, what we know today physiologically, that it governs the blood. It's responsible for the circulation of the blood. And of course, if the heart is strong and if the circulation is good, a person will be full of vigor and have good constitution. You can think about a well-trained athlete, someone who exercises every day, who eats a very healthy diet. These people have very strong constitutions, can run for miles, can perform in a Super Bowl or any given Sunday, as they say. These people are strong. Their hearts pump well and feed the rest of their body blood and oxygen. You can take that to the flip side. Someone who has congestive heart failure, for example. These people, their hearts are no longer pumping as strong as when they were younger. In fact, it tends to be one of the signs of congestive heart failure is that your ejection fraction, which is the amount of blood that comes out with every single contraction, starts getting lower and lower. So your heart is getting weaker, your circulation is getting poor, and these people, one of their most common symptoms are they feel tired. They feel tired all the time. They walk 1 or 2 blocks, they feel tired. Or they walk a little bit up one flight of stairs, they get very tired, compared to how they used to be when the heart was stronger. So, now, with that said though, the physicians of ancient China saw something else about the heart, which to me is very fascinating. They gave it the function that it housed the mind. Now the mind in Chinese is known as Shen. And this is actually the symbol of the mind on the right here, the Chinese characters. And the Shen is a little bit more complex than how we view the mind. Because in the Chinese perspective, they view it as a component of the emotional aspect of the person, the mental capacity, which means your knowledge, your learning, and as well as your spiritual component. They saw that the heart is your spiritual connection to the higher being, to God, to whatever the spirit means for you. And I think this is very fascinating because modern medicine is starting to come to an understanding, a grasp of this knowledge that has been around for nearly 4,000 years. And yet, China was not the only culture that had these kind of beliefs. Even in today's world, in modern day America, we still go around and talk about how I keep God in my heart. I hold God in my heart. Or Valentine's Day last week. My heart is broken. You feel an emotional, you feel some sadness, you feel some strong emotions, and we bring it back to the heart. And this is important because the emotions, we're starting to realize that the emotions in the mind play a very big part in our heart health. There are 3 components of a healthy heart that I want to talk about tonight. Okay. 1, how to eat for your heart, how to live for your heart, and how to love your heart. All right. But first, we're going to talk about how to eat for your heart. And later on, we should hopefully be able to eat for our heart a little bit over there. So, Dr. Stephen DeVries, who is a cardiologist and a professor of the Division of Cardiology at Northwestern University in Chicago, says this about nutrition. Nutrition is perhaps the most powerful therapy available for the prevention and treatment of coronary disease. Now, with that said, this is why I wanted to start with eating for your heart, because data and research after research continues to support and show us that eating a heart-healthy diet is probably the most substantial thing that we can do in the long term for the health of our heart. And one particular component that I want to talk about and is becoming very, very favored in terms of dietary recommendations is the impact of inflammation with the heart. Now, acute inflammation is a normal physiological process in the body. Anytime you get an acute injury, let's say you cut your arm, it gets a little red, it gets swollen, it gets warm. Those are all parts of the inflammatory response that the body has, which helps in healing. The problem is that with chronic diseases including heart disease, chronic inflammation, and this is more like a subacute inflammation, a constant inflammatory response, has been shown to continue to worsen chronic disease. In fact, is now starting to be believed as one of the major pathophysiological mechanisms that underlies most chronic diseases. Now, for example, in heart disease, vascular inflammation, the inflammation of our arteries is a significant component in both the development of atherosclerosis, which is the plaque buildup in the arteries, as mentioned earlier, as well as what is known as potential plaque instability, the potential for these plaques to break off from the walls of the arteries and get clogged or clog upstream, causing a heart attack or a stroke. So, the way that we address this state of inflammation is sort of a generalized term that is called the anti-inflammatory diet. Now, there is not a specific diet that is the anti-inflammatory diet. In fact, there are multiple types of diets that fall under this category. But ultimately, these guidelines that make up the anti-inflammatory diet are all founded on evidence-based principles of sound eating that promotes health and prevents and reduces inflammation in the body. One of the most common and popular of these diets is the Mediterranean diet, and there's quite a significant amount of research that's been done on the Mediterranean diet. And we'll talk about the guidelines of what the Mediterranean diet includes, but I just wanted to kind of bring up a couple of research studies that were done. The first one was the Lion Diet Heart Study that was done in Europe. They looked at 600 patients after these patients had a heart attack. So 600 patients that had a heart attack, split into 2 groups. One of the groups, they started on a Mediterranean diet. And I told you we'll look over what these guidelines suggest. And the other group, they started them on a prudent diet, which ultimately was they just told them, reduce your cholesterol and reduce your fat intake. This was supposed to be a 5-year study, but it stopped after a little bit more than 2 years. And simply because the group under the group that was following the Mediterranean diet reduced their cardiovascular events by over 70%, which is very significant. Okay? That means 3 out of every 4 people in that, that means that 73% of people in the Mediterranean diet group that were, how should I break this down? That the people in the prudent diet group, they were having 73% more episodes of cardiovascular events than the people in the Mediterranean group. So they were having a significant amount of cardiovascular events, including heart attacks, angina, plaque instability, and so forth, compared to the Mediterranean diet group. Now here in our country, in the United States, there was a study done by the National Institute of Health, as well as the AARP, the American Association. It used to be the American Association of Retired Persons. I think it's been changed recently, though, to something else. But there was the NIH AARP Diet and Health Study. 10-year study from 95 to 2005. They looked at a significant amount of people, over 200,000 men, over 160,000 women. And the diet that they used was very similar to the Mediterranean diet, an anti-inflammatory type of diet. It was associated with a 20% reduction of all-cause mortality, including heart disease. That means everything except cancer. Everything else, all the different types of causes of death, were significantly reduced in the diet group in this study. So,
those were both Mediterranean diets?
Yes, they were both anti-inflammatory diets. Okay. Then another study at Harvard Medical School ultimately concluded diets using healthy fats, whole grains, and an abundance of fruit and vegetables and adequate omega-3 fatty acids can offer significant protection against coronary heart disease. Now, there are 9 guidelines that I wanted to talk about that are all of these evidence-based anti-inflammatory diet guidelines. Things that some of you have probably heard about before. I'm just kind of going to reiterate and kind of put it into a little bit of easier perspective. Number 1, you want to ensure that you get an adequate amount of omega-3 fatty acids, which is now being recommended by both the American Heart Association as well as other organizations, that you have at least 2 servings of fish that are high in omega-3 fatty acids weekly. And these fatty fish include wild salmon, sardines, anchovies, tilapia, as well as tuna. Now, at the same time, you can also supplement this with 1 gram of a omega-3 supplement, whether it be a fish oil. Fish oils are still the ones that are mostly recommended. But you just want to make sure that it has a good mixture of both the EPA and DHA, which are the 2 types of omega-3 fatty acid breakdown products that are most beneficial for us. Now, at the same time, we're recommending that your intake of omega-6 fatty acids. Now, let's take a step back. We need both omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in our diet. But the problem is that the average American diet consumes about 20 to 40 portions of omega-6s to 1 omega-3s. The recommendation is a ratio of 2 to 4 to 1. So 2 to 4 omega-6 portions to 1 omega-3. We're significantly off balance in this section, which is why we're really pushing that getting enough or increasing your omega-3 intake is going to be essential for a heart-healthy diet. At the same time, we're recommending that you choose healthy fats. Now, extra virgin olive oil is also a source of omega-3 fatty acids. So, and I know that all of us have heard, use olive oil for cooking and so forth. Another good option is canola oil. So extra virgin olive oil or canola oil could both. Other things that it could include also flaxseed. Flaxseed is a great source of omega-3s as well as a healthy type of fat. 3rd guideline, you want to increase your vegetable and fruit intake. They're recommending anywhere from 5 to 9 servings daily, with, of course, more than half of those being vegetable sources and not fruit. So you can't just grab 9 strawberries and eat 9 strawberries all day. You do need to add the greens and the broccolis and the spinach and so forth. So, but just upping the intake of fruit and vegetables is essential. We also recommend that you choose whole grain carbohydrates. With we're trying to get about 25 grams of fiber daily, which can be difficult. But if you start learning to read the ingredient list or the nutrition information on foods, you get an idea of how much fiber is in there, and you just start keeping track of that. Try to remember 25 and get as close to that as you can daily. There's also a recommendation to get protein from plant sources. So we don't have to only get protein from meat sources. We can get it from legumes and beans, nuts and seeds. All of those are good options to increase your protein sources from plant sources other than, and not meat sources. And one of the things that I really like, which I think a lot of us can appreciate, is adding herbs and spices that have anti-inflammatory properties to our meals. Not only makes our food better, it helps our heart. My specific favorite is garlic. And I'll talk a second about that, but other things that you can include rosemary, ginger, oregano, turmeric, and cumin. All things that you probably have in your kitchen already. Things that you just can add a little bit more into your foods to give yourself a little bit more anti-inflammatory effect. Now let's talk a little bit about garlic. I recommend to every single one of my patients to increase their garlic intake unless they don't like garlic. And it's rare to find someone that doesn't like garlic. And I'm hoping that all of you here like garlic. Because there is good evidence to support its use for heart health. Now, we know that garlic can reduce atherosclerosis and in particular bad cholesterol, the LDL. And at the same time, it helps to lower your blood pressure. The one thing it does do as well is it has an anticoagulation effect. So it is essential that if you are on warfarin or any other anticoagulation medication, that you tell your doctor that you're increasing your intake of garlic, because it can affect your clotting capability.
Warfarin. Oh, sorry, warfarin.
Oh, it's Coumadin. Sorry. Yeah.
Does it make it worse or better?
It makes you less likely to clot, so it makes you more anticoagulated.
Okay.
And so I like to recommend 1 to 2 cloves of garlic daily. You just take a nice thing of garlic, pull off 2 cloves, crush them up, put them into your food, chop them up, put it into your food. Or where I trained up in New York, we have a large Dominican population up there, and they love garlic tea. They smash it up, put it into hot water, and just drink it like this. And they swear by it for a lot of things. And once you try it, it's actually pretty good. If you like garlic, it's not as strong as you think it would be. It actually tastes pretty good. And since it was Valentine's, right after you show how much you love your honey by protecting your heart and kissing them afterwards, and with a and your honey should be appreciative of that, because that garlic breath means that you're trying to live longer.
Let them eat some garlic too.
Exactly. Now, recommendations 7 and 8 are a little bit more about eating habits. Number 7, eat mindfully. You want to be mindful of your food portions, and you want to savor your food. In Chinese medicine, it's very interesting because they talk about how when we eat any foods, if you eat it with a group, you eat it with friends and family, you tend to feel happier, and you're supporting your heart health. And all of us have experienced that. Eating dinner, think of Thanksgiving, when you're with a nice group of people, of family, and just that feeling of connection that you have when you're having great food and great company. It's strong for your heart. And this is one of the things that we recommend. Number 8 is a really interesting philosophy that's practiced in Okinawa, harahachibu. It ultimately means once you start getting full, when you feel that you're 8 out of 10 full, you stop eating. So you're cutting down calories. You're also paying more attention to what you're eating. I know it's sometimes hard. If something is really good and you have great food, you just want to put it all down. But this has been shown to just not only decrease calories, it just, all of us have gotten to the point where it just feels a little bit better. And it's a good philosophy to follow. Number 9, I think a lot of you might like. They recommend eating 1 to 2 ounces of dark chocolate, all on an occasional basis, okay, as an occasional treat. And what they recommend is a chocolate that has approximately 70% cocoa in it. That means it's a darker chocolate, and a lot of people tend to like the lighter chocolate, but the darker chocolate has the more heart-healthy benefits. And those 9 nutrition guidelines, you know, for the most part encompass the anti-inflammatory diet guidelines. Things that you can incorporate every day into your life, help you live that heart-healthy life. Now, how do you live for your heart? Okay. Lifestyle affects your heart. And as you can see here, the first and probably the most important lifestyle choice that you can make for yourself if you are smoking currently is to stop smoking. Smoking increases not only blood pressure and cardiovascular events, it increases your risk for so many other types of diseases. And as soon as you can stop smoking, the better that you can, the better that your health will be overall. They've done so many studies on how a person who smokes, when they compare about smoking and longevity of life, they quickly, if you smoke, you're going to quickly decrease the length of time that you're going to live, your longevity in life. As soon as you smoke, even if you've been smoking for 20, 30 years, you automatically get yourself out of that path that you were going to, cutting your life shorter and add a couple of years back into your life. As soon as you quit smoking. So it's such an essential thing to do. Just stop smoking. Limiting alcohol intake. Now, there's good research to show that 1 to 2 glasses of red wine a day is actually heart healthy. But overall, just limiting your alcohol intake helps your heart. Alcohol can weaken the heart. Okay, so maintaining a healthy weight. This is probably, so obesity is probably the most, or the largest public health problem that we have in this country right now, in every single age group. The number of people, the number of children who are obese, the number of adults who are obese continues to rise. And obesity is a risk factor for so many different disease processes as well. We definitely know that obesity will increase your bad cholesterol, your LDL, and it increases your overall risk of getting heart disease. So trying to maintain a healthy weight and doing the dietary anti-inflammatory diet guidelines that I recommended earlier can help you maintain a healthy weight. But all of that can ultimately help your overall heart health. And then, of course, exercise. The general recommendation is 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes a day to walk or do more intensive aerobics. If you want to do it daily or more than 3 times a week, it's even better. But at the least 3 times a week is what we recommend. What I like to tell and teach my patients about is this, the 10,000 step program. Now, this has been around for a few years. It started in Japan. 10,000 steps equals about 5 miles a day. It's equal to about a 30-minute vigorous workout daily. And what it includes is every single step that you've done from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. So when you're walking to the bathroom, when you're walking around at work, all those steps are included in your 10,000 steps a day. The way that you calculate, or the way that you keep track of this is through the use of a pedometer. So you put a little thing in your belt. It tells you how many steps that you've walked for that day. If you get home and you're at 9,000 steps, take a nice 1,000 step walk around your neighborhood. You're at 10,000 steps. What this has continued to show is that it can help control your weight. It'll increase your overall aerobic strength as well as improve your muscle and bone strength. And this is what we're talking about here. It'll help you stay heart healthy. Very simple exercise that anyone and everyone can do, because walking is one of the basic things that all of us can do. Okay. Let's figure out how to love your heart. So, a happy heart. We now know that there are specific emotional states that are commonly linked to heart disease, and these three main ones are stress, anxiety, and depression. There is good evidence that shows that a person who is diagnosed with anxiety in their 20s, so you're a 20-year-old, go to your doctor because you're always anxious and stressed, they diagnose you with anxiety. Having anxiety at that early age is a good predictor that your risk of heart disease in your 50s will be doubled. Okay? So we know that anxiety, that depression and stress can affect the heart negatively. At the same time, we know that there is a positive association with happiness and a healthy heart. So first, what do we know about stress and what it does to the heart? So anytime we're stressed, the body releases a thing called catecholamines, which is adrenaline. And we absolutely know that adrenaline increases your heart rate as well as increases your blood pressure. And the data also shows that acute stress can increase your level of total cholesterol within hours after that stress. All of us experience acute stress. Driving here on the freeway or on the highway can cause acute stress. Opening up a bill can cause acute stress. Watching the Super Bowl and seeing the San Francisco 49ers lose can cause acute stress. So all of stress can absolutely affect our heart. And this is an interesting syndrome that kind of, I think, just kind of shows how emotions and stress can really affect the heart. It's a syndrome called broken heart syndrome, which is also known in medicine as stress cardiomyopathy. It's a condition in which a stressful situation, in particular, let's say the death of a loved one, can cause symptoms in the patient, symptoms of chest pain, feeling I'm having a heart attack, when they're not having a heart attack, but what's actually going on is that a part of the heart temporarily enlarges and weakens and won't pump or circulate blood as well as it does when it's normal. Now this usually resolves, but you can talk to pretty much any doctor, and there are story after story of patients that we've had where after they've lost a loved one, and I've seen this in patients who are much older, have been with a loved one, say their wife of 30, 40 years dies. They don't live much longer afterwards. I guarantee if we were to autopsy those patients, you would see a significant deterioration or a weakness of the heart, broken heart syndrome affecting those patients. And emotions can affect the heart. So we know that negative emotions can affect the heart negatively. At the same time, we know that positive emotions can positively affect the heart. Some research has been done, some really interesting research has been done where patients who have a positive psychological well-being have been shown to, that positive psychological well-being has been shown to consistently protect against heart disease. And this is independent of every other risk factor or illnesses. So that means no matter if you're diabetic, no matter if you are smoking, if you have a positive psychological well-being, this improves your overall, or this decreases your overall cardiovascular risk, which is fascinating. Just being happy can strengthen the heart. So, now, of the different emotional states, and I am going to kind of go over the list in a second, optimism has been shown to be the most robustly associated with a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease or events.
It's the opposite for pessimism?
Yeah, that's a great, so anxiety, depression, and although I have seen something, I did read something once that some the pessimism might actually increase life a little bit. Makes you a little bit more cautious in life. I know, it's a very interesting, yeah, it's very interesting. Makes you survive longer because you're more wary of everything around you. Yeah. Yeah. So research does suggest that there's certain personal attributes that help people help to manage disease more healthfully. And these attributes are these ones that are listed here. Emotional vitality, which is ultimately a sense of enthusiasm, of hopefulness and engagement. And then optimism, which is what I mentioned earlier. It's you believe that good things will happen and that even if bad things are happening, that there will eventually be a day when good things will come again. Over and over, research has shown if you have a supportive network of family and friends, it helps support the heart. And this includes, in fact, I was just listening on the radio a couple days ago. It talked about how being married, over a 10-year period of being married, and I guess it depends on who you're married to, but being married can strengthen the heart and ultimately leads to longer health than someone who's not in that same period of time.
But isn't that higher for males than females?
That's a good question. That's why I said I think it's based on who you're married to. And then another one is being good at self-regulation, bouncing back from stressful situations. Is another attribute that can help lead to a healthy heart. So, I understand that not all of us are natural optimists and not all of us are on the happier side of life. But there are ways that we can sort of help to train our mind to get to that point where some of these emotions that can negatively affect our heart become less. And this is the section in mind-body therapy. Wanted to talk a little bit about meditation because there is good data to support the effect of meditation on overall heart health. Now, there was a study done in which patients were tested or were taught meditation. Were taught a specific type of meditation and were practicing it twice a day for 20 minutes a day. The people in this group that were practicing meditation, after 5 years, had a decreased risk of cardiovascular events and death by 43% compared to the control group. So it's fascinating that something so simple can also really positively affect our heart. And really, I mean, the question is always asked, what is meditation? What do I have to do? What is meditation? It's found in every single culture around the world in many different types of spiritual teachings and traditions and healing systems. And it's a practice that's really based on silence and stillness. One of my favorite quotes is by Jon Kabat-Zinn when asked what is meditation, and what he said, it's about stopping and being present. That is all. So there are different types of meditation, and I think most of us have in our mind the image of the Buddhist monk sitting and meditating for long periods of time. But there are walking or moving types of meditations as well. When you do yoga, when you practice Tai Chi or Qigong, which is a movement type of exercise based in traditional Chinese medicine, all of those are meditation as well. Even what I mentioned earlier, walking can be meditation. Thomas Jefferson was I believe a quote that he was associated with a line that when you're walking, don't think about anything that's happening behind you and don't think about anything that's happening in front of you. All you do is pay attention to everything that's going on at that moment. Look at the flowers, look at the trees, look at the sky. And what he was doing there is meditating in that moment. And he would, I believe they attributed that he would walk daily, I think 4 miles a day, something to that extent. And so just simply walking and paying attention to your surroundings is a form of meditation, something that all of us can do very simply.
Would running be considered?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, when I run. But when I run, I'm not just silent, don't think of anything. I solve a lot of problems when I run.
Oh.
So is that considered meditation?
So I know some people who run can get into the Zen. I've heard this saying before. They can get really focused and just focus on nothing else but what they're doing. I think that the fact that you're solving things in your mind and not really focusing on the present would probably say that you're not really meditating.
Right.
You know, you're still carrying whatever's behind you or or going to whatever is ahead of you. It's not. But it can be a form of meditation if you learn to quiet the mind. And so the last thing I really wanted to just kind of talk about is how easy it is to meditate, because it's simple. And SOLER is an acronym that I've heard before on how to meditate. S, stop. Stop whatever you're doing. Stop any distractions, interruptions. Stop your phone and find a quiet spot. Whether you sit, whether you want to lay down, just stop. Secondly, observe. And it's very simple. You're observing only one thing, your breath. It's the most simplest practice. If you think about it, that breath is what, and I tell this to my patients all the time, that, and to understand how important that breath is. As soon as that stops, this life stops. We are one breath away from living and not. So the breath is essentially important to our being. And so bringing your attention and focus to your breath is a very easy way to calm the mind and bring yourself to the present, because you always have to take breaths in. And at the same time, you're going to start observing, particularly when you're first starting meditation, a lot of different sensations throughout the body. You know, itches in particular. You're sitting there and you're thinking, oh man, my leg itches, my nose itches. It's bothering me so bad. I can't think of anything else but my nose itching. And the thing is, once you start practicing meditation longer and longer, you start realizing those sensations are just your mind playing games with you. You know, in the beginning, go ahead and scratch it and you feel better, and then continue with the meditation. But when you start getting a little bit better at it, you can just refocus yourself back to your breath, and before you know it, that itch is gone. And the masters of meditation through history have always said that an untrained mind, untrained meaning untrained in meditation, is like a little puppy. You know, if you think about a little puppy, it runs everywhere. It loses interest really fast as well and runs to another thing. That's how our mind is when we first try to sit and meditate. Our mind runs everywhere and thinks about everything. You have to be the master and tell it to come back, to refocus yourself back to your breath. And it becomes easier and easier with practice. Let it be, let it be. That ultimately is just what I mentioned. You just let these things that happen. You hear a car beeping outside, you hear a dog barking. Let it be. Those things are not bothering you in the present when you're meditating. You should just, if it does, remember, just bring your mind back to your breath. And then return. So again, you're returning your focus always back to your breath. I always recommend to my patients, if you're going to start trying to meditate, start with a few minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. You'll see, you'll start getting better and better. You get to 10 minutes, get to 15 minutes, get to 20 minutes. And you just become better at it. It's like anything. With practice, you just become better. And these simple techniques can help strengthen your heart. So, how to live a heart-healthy life. 3 things. Eat for your heart. Live for your heart. Remember to love your heart. And you do that, and I guarantee that your risk of being one of those 1 in 4 who are going to die from heart disease is going to be decreased. And you're going to die eventually, but it's going to be from something else.